After her initial upset primary win, O'Donnell largely shut out the national news media, but now she's breaking her silence in an exclusive interview with CNN's Jim Acosta.
Let me ask you about gun control, because you were at an event today with a gun rights organization who endorsed you, and you said at the event, quote, "I will make sure the UN doesn't supersede our rights as well." Are you saying that the United Nations has the ability to supersede the laws of the United States, take gun rights away from people?
The United Nations does not have the ability unless our U.S. Senate cedes that sovereignty to the United Nations.
But that would never happen, right?
Well, the UN right now is considering some massive reforms, massive policies that will severely restrict our Second Amendment right. When I go to Washington, D.C., whether it's on the Second Amendment or any other issue, I will fight to make sure that we don't continue to cede more of our sovereignty over to the United Nations.
Let me ask you about Afghanistan. The president's timetable for withdrawal, good idea or bad idea?
We need to make our foreign policy decisions based on their effectiveness, not based on time. So we need to take a serious look at what's going on over there, and before we make any decisions, we need to examine whether or not it's weakening our own security.
Is Sarah Palin qualified to be president?
Is she running for president?
I don't know, you tell me.
Well, again, hypotheticals. I mean,
I've heard you talk on the phone with her. Does she advise your campaign?
She does not advise our campaign.
Does she give you advice?
She gives me "you go girl" advice. Don't listen to them. If anyone knows about
Did she really tell you to speak through Fox News?
Well, I heard that she didn't tell me personally, okay, but I heard her say something like that on O'Reilly. You know, because you know, if anyone knows about the politics of personal destruction, it's women candidates, women politicians like Sarah Palin.
If the Republicans take the Senate, Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell or Jim DeMint?
I don't know yet, because what I would need to say is Jim DeMint running?
You tell me.
I honestly don't know. I love Senator DeMint. I love what he does. He's a principled man. But what I've said when people have asked me who I would support in leadership, I don't know that as an outsider. Right now, I'm a candidate, not a U.S. senator.
Is the unemployment problem in this country Barack Obama's fault or George Bush's fault?
It's a combination of politicians in Washington losing their way. Like I said, whether it's Republicans or Democrats, our so-called leaders in Washington have lost their way and are no longer in touch with the needs of the Delaware. Any citizen, not just Delaware. Yeah. So I think what we need to do to get our country back on track is to replace career politicians with citizen politicians.
Let me make this the last thing. Your staff was very reluctant to have us ask you about these past statements that you made in the past. And I wanted to ask you, why is that? Because aren't they your statements?
This campaign is about the future and not the past. This campaign is about what each candidate is going to do to address the needs of the people in Delaware. How we're going to get private business jobs back in Delaware. How we're going to get our economy back on track. How we're going to empower the individual and the entrepreneur to open up those mom and pop businesses back on Main Street. That's what's important to the Delawareans, and that's what should be important to both candidates in this race.
So you're never going to talk about your time with Bill Maher?
Why? What I said or did on a comedy show, you know, over a decade ago is not relevant to this election.
All right, let's bring in Jim Acosta, who did that exclusive interview with Christine O'Donnell. Jim, thanks very much for bringing us the interview, but take us a little bit behind the scenes. Give our viewers here in the United States and around the world a little flavor about this woman, something we didn't necessarily see in the interview.
Well, you know, what a lot of people know about Christine O'Donnell now is, of course, those clips we've seen from Bill Maher. She appeared on his talk show Politically Incorrect that aired on ABC during the 90s, and during those interviews she made a lot of provocative statements, and now she's having to pay for those statements in many ways. We've seen her poll numbers drop here in Delaware, and it could cost her the election, and she knows that. That's why she is putting out these advertisements that you just ran a few moments ago, and I think that's why we're going to see Christine O'Donnell start doing more interviews, start making more public appearances. For example, at an event earlier today, she took questions from reporters. That's not something that her campaign has advised her to do very much in the past, and I pressed her campaign on this. I asked her, or I asked them, I said, is this a good idea not to put her in front of the press and not have her take questions from the news media? Because as you saw during that interview, she was more than happy to get engaged in a pretty lengthy exchange of all the big issues that are going on right now, and including what she talked about in the past. And they sort of acknowledged that perhaps they need to get her out more. And of course, I mentioned to her she can she could speak through CNN anytime, Wolf.
I'm getting a lot of emails from viewers out there, a lot of tweets on Twitter as well, saying she seemed a lot more poised than they had been led to believe, certainly much more knowledgeable about a lot of these issues. Jim Acosta, thanks very much for doing this interview with Christine O'Donnell.